G'day Superfreak, welcome back. Today we're talking about something really exciting. I love talking about this because I love seeing subtle tiny shifts happen with ease really quickly in a person. And often what happens is they start off by saying, I feel like I've achieved a lot, but I only feel that transformation, for lack of a better term, I only feel it internally. It's like my external world hasn't changed that much. And I know how frustrating that can feel when you feel like you're so different, but life doesn't really feel all that different. Your finances don't feel that different. Your relationship doesn't feel different. It might even feel like it's a little bit worse than it was before, but you know still something has internally shifted in you. And some people get stuck in that perpetual loop for a really long time, like only feeling like they've had a transformation internally. So today I'm going to teach you one of my favorite top secret, not so secret, super freak, high performance habits, where we're going to take extraordinary and bring the ordinary back to it. And this is a tool that I use to help my clients who want to create impossible things. These are humans who have done some pretty cool things before, but the thing that they want to create next, it's like, oh, that really does feel impossible. For example, I've been coming second in my world titles for 10 years and I want to come first. Or I don't have the money or the savings or the time, but I really want to buy my dream house. I really want to set my family up in the dream house so I can feel safe and secure and making that happen. Or I really think that I could increase my turnover in my business and I'd like to do it times 5 instead of just a little bit. It's these big, audacious, hairy goals that get us really excited. And yet there's a huge gap between where we are and where we want to be. There's a knowledge gap. There's a steps gap. I am really interested in working with people who have fascinating and inspiring goals that feel quite impossible to them, because I like to work in that space of we don't know how to do this. We are figuring it out as we go. And we have to find ways to turn it into a project. We have to find ways to be able to stick it out when we start to question am I nuts? Am I nuts for doing this? Should I just give it up? Is this a crazy, wild, silly dream? And of course, this is where I come in. So I want to talk to you about what we do in this situation. First, if you're someone who says to yourself, right, I am someone who experiences internal results. I don't often see the shifts externally. I want to pause you. And I want you to go back and look back at physically what has changed, actually physically. Because a lot of times our focus is on what hasn't shifted because we have these big, hairy, audacious goals. And we haven't been focusing or celebrating what has really changed and what has transformed and what has improved. It might be, for example, you wanted to improve your financial situation and you've gone from, not so functional to like pretty functional with it and you want to go to exceptional now. Transformation like that is completely up to you and it's completely possible so long as you're willing to stick it out. And sometimes we can think, oh, I'm no better off than I was. But if you look at your finances, they're healthier. You're in less debt, or maybe you have no debt. Or perhaps you're working less and making the same amount of money. So not much else has changed, but that's a big thing. For example, right? So it's really important first and foremost to be aware of our language and not say things like, nothing has improved. I only ever see internal results, because I'm willing to bet 9 times out of 10 that the results have changed physically, but it feels like wading through honey. It feels like nothing is happening. And this is the secret, as I mentioned in my last episode, with exponential transformation. At first, it feels like nothing is happening. And then all of a sudden, whooshka, something happens, right? It starts to really shift and change. So first step is know that you probably have had some physical transformation. It's just not happening fast enough by your made up standard. Secondly, internal shifts is where it begins. If you stop there, you'll only ever have internal shifts. But if you continue, the shifts become noticeable not just by you, but by your loved ones, your mentors, the people who are surrounding you and encouraging you, who love you, who you love, who are with you all the time, the people who are really paying attention. That's when it starts to get noticed slightly externally. And then it is the people who are in your life. So it starts internally, and then external shifts are a lagging result of the internal ones. So all you've got to do is keep going. Remember, compounded effort. compounded results, compounded success. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and listen to episode 54 where I talk about that. So first, just know that you probably have had physical results that are not necessarily what you would have expected, but it's really important to look back. Secondly, know that internal is the first clue. Then it starts to get noticed by your close, nearest and dearest, the people who are paying attention. And then secondly, it just ripples out to where it gets noticed. But here's the thing. When you want to create something that feels impossible, big, audacious, wild, you don't know anyone who's done it before, it's not necessarily something that has a series of well put together, easy to follow steps, because part of it seems like it's got to do with luck and being in the right place at the right time. How do we have control over that? How do we stay in the game when our human nature, we crave certainty, we want certainty? How do we do that? Well, this is what I do with my clients. My job is to help them take a big, hairy, audacious dream and turn it into a goal or a project. And I'm going to show you in this episode how you can do it for yourself, how you can map out something that feels impossible into something predictable and measurable and process-based. And that is the first key. We have to make it process-based. So when you want to create something, let's say I'm thinking back to some past clients. I want to win a world titles, right? There's some training and there's some steps and there's some things involved that we know we have control over, but then there's like pieces that we don't have control over, such as what happens if I'm injured on the day? What happens if I get a judge that is biased against me? What happens if I'm just not feeling so good? What happens if I'm not as fast? There's things that are outside of our control. I'm thinking of other clients who have wanted to create really big results that rely on other people actually choosing them and finding them and seeing them. Maybe that's in a certain career path, maybe it's in a business path. I'm thinking of clients who've wanted to create results in their bodies, results whereby they've wanted to shift or transform something and they're not sure how long it's going to take, changes in their business, changes in their finances, changes in their home and their families. And so you can apply this anywhere, I think is what I'm saying. And the first key is to understand that we have to turn big, impossible things that are completely intangible into project-based work with process-based actions. Now, what do I mean by that? I want you to think about the thing that feels wildly impossible or big and hairy to you that you're not sure. Often what happens is we set goals that are like SMART goals. And I have beef with SMART goals because to me, it's more like a to-do list, right? It's like I write down the things and I reverse engineer it and then I go backwards and I tick everything off and it's like really nice. You get to feel like you're really achieving something. But if it's that predictable and measurable and whatever, why don't you just do it? You don't have to put it into a goal format. That's where my beef is at. So I prefer to work with people on things that feel kind of wild, where you might know some steps, but there's a whole unknown factor. There's a bit of magic that has to occur. There's a time frame where we're setting the time frame, but we have to remember that we're making it up. Maybe there's a little bit of pressure there. Maybe you've created something wonderful before, but this just really does feel impossible this time. That's what I'm interested in, because at that point, you can't reverse engineer it. At that point, even people who have achieved it before wouldn't necessarily be able to tell you how exactly they did it. And if you tried to repeat exactly what they did, you wouldn't find yourself able to replicate exactly the same circumstances and scenarios. It was very much a right place, right time situation, as well as being the kind of person who recognizes the opportunities and takes them as they come. So we need to, in these circumstances, things that we're at risk of are giving up too early, questioning ourselves and not being sold on ourselves in the process, and having a perfect system for never actually making it because we risk so much failure and embarrassment that we keep ourselves exactly where we are. Now, everyone does this. We all have our own flavor of personal self-sabotage when it comes to these things. And part of the reason why we give up too early is because of the unknown factor. We can feel like for a really long time, instead of having something grounded and tangible to be able to see the physical results on the outside of how far we have come, we don't have anything to measure or track against. Again, this is why SMART goals, people love them, because there's something specific, measurable, attainable, and real, which keeps you on track. It's like a little dopamine hit whenever you get to cross off one of the milestones towards your goal. But if you're creating something impossible, it doesn't really work, right? There's like no milestone you can hit. How do you know? So we've got to create that. And in creating that, you will end up sticking it out as long as you need to in order for the thing to happen. 80% of it is just showing up. And so many people give up right before it's about to get really, really interesting. So the other thing that we are at risk of is thinking that we're nuts. You know, if you're doing it for a really long time and you're not seeing the results and you don't have something tangible that you can measure and tick off and get that dopamine hit with, you can start to question if you've even done anything at all. You can start to question if it works at all. You can start to question if maybe I should just like go get a real job, or maybe I should just give up on this. Maybe other people in your life want it for you badly enough as well, and they can't see those internal shifts just yet. And they start wondering if you should be further ahead than you are based on where they've made up you should be by now, which is what we all do. And we start to wonder, should I be giving up on this? Is this like a crazy pipe dream? Am I nuts? And I know that can be a little bit triggering for some people, but one of the things I like to tell my clients, and this is a pretty good filter for if you're someone who would love working with a person like me, is I like to say to them, at the point you're questioning if you're a little bit nuts, you're exactly where you need to be. Now, what do I mean by that? You're probably in a scenario where you have completely let go of your ego, or you're learning to. You've become committed to being okay with failure. You're willing to try new things. And you're at that stage where you've jumped in 2 feet first. You're all in. It doesn't feel like there's any coming out, and yet it hasn't quite happened yet. It's at that point where we start to question our sanity. And our job is to actually see this as a point in the road, which is a green light. Quick little interruption. If you love what's in today's episode, and I really think you will, you are going to love the Fierce Salon. The Fierce Salon is a small group coaching program where I coach and train people to achieve wildly impossible things and repeat them and have them be sustainable again and again and again. It's a 6-month experience. You get to work with me, and it is so much fun. We're kicking off soon. Check it out in the link below. All right, let's get into it. Let's keep going. Much easier said than done, my friend, I promise you. But with this tool I'm sharing with you, this eradicates these 3 problems. Okay, so let's get to the tool. So this is about turning your big goals into process-driven projects. How do we do that when there is a knowledge gap, when the task feels impossible? So the first thing to check in with is, what do I want? What actually is it that I want? Now, we want to be really careful at this point that we're not mistaking a goal for a state. I'll explain what I mean. Sometimes when we say, what do you want? Someone might say, and I've done this before too, I just want to be happy, or I just want to feel confident in my selling, or I want to be able to relax in XYZ circumstance, or I just want to feel an inner sense of peace. I want to feel successful, right? All these things are really nice, but they're internal states. And internal states fluctuate and they change and they come and they go. 1 minute I could be riding a high because I've come out of an awesome meditation, or I've had some fantastic news. And then the next minute I could get some devastating news, or I could stub my toe and trip over my dog and drop my coffee all over me and burn myself, and might affect my state. And so a state is something you can access, and it's infinite. You can access it right now. You don't have to achieve anything. There's often a state underneath a goal, but it's really important not to make a state a goal, because you can access a state much faster. A goal, on the other hand, so a wild, hairy, impossible, audacious goal is something that is external to you. You actually can't, you know when you've got it. You either got it or you don't. And once you got it, it's not going to necessarily go away if you stub your toe. It's not reliant on your state. It will bring up certain states in you, but for example, a state would be joy, peace, happiness, confidence. A goal would be $1 million, a Mediterranean cruise, 6 clients, a world championship title, first place, right? That's a goal. So you want to be really aware that your goals are actual goals. Your big, wild, hairy vision is an actual goal and not a state. I'm okay if you can't see it. It doesn't have to be extraordinarily specific. As you get closer to it, you will become more specific on what it is. What matters now at this point is that it's a goal, it's not a state. Then what you do is you ask yourself, well, what kind of person do I need to be in order for that to be something that happens naturally for me? What do I mean by that? So I'm not really into creating things in such a pushy sort of a way that you get it, but you're crawling over the finish line, and when you get there, you just need a nap, or you actually have to take a backward step because you've pushed yourself so hard that it's unsustainable and unrepeatable. That to me is more like a fluke, and it very much feels like a fluke, or you will hesitate to do it again because you'll be a little bit shy, because you'll be afraid of burnout. I hear it all the time. I've done it so many times. And so I'm more into creating things in a sustainable way, in doing it in what I call a walkthrough process, a sustainable, easy walkthrough process. And what I mean by that is, I know we've achieved it with clients when they've secretly said to me, yeah, I got it, but it was like kind of boring. Like I thought I'd be more excited, meaning one of my clients was holding up the first place trophy and people were lifting him up and throwing him in the air. And he was like, I was really grateful, but it didn't feel like, oh my God. It just felt like, yeah. Another one of my clients was walking across the stage with a big check in her hand, and she thought she'd be crying and shivering and losing it completely, but she was just like, yeah, of course. That's what happens. This is what I mean by a sustainable walkthrough process. It means by the time you get there, you are the kind of person who has this type of thing. So you expect it, you do the things, you don't have resistance, you don't have stuff around it, and it's not such a big deal that you don't feel like you could do it again. In fact, you feel like you could do it all day. That's my favorite kind of achievement. That's how I want you to create impossible things. And it's possible for all of us to achieve our goals in both ways, either by crawling across the finishing line or doing it in a walkthrough process. My preference is the latter. So in order to create it as a walkthrough process, you need to become the kind of person who has that with ease. Now, what does that mean? It means ask yourself, what are the qualities that this person would embody? What are the traits that this person would embody? What kind of lifestyle do they live? How do they maybe speak? How do they eat? And ask yourself, what are the most important parts to becoming that person that will make the biggest difference in me actually growing into the kind of person who has that? So when you're thinking about something wild and impossible, we spoke about in my last episode, when someone has exponential or compounded success, it's when they've stuck it out long enough through the ups and through the downs, doing the things they know they need to do, like J.K. Rowling writing, for example, doing the things they need to do and having that compounding effect, and then the compounding success that happens on top of that. So knowing what it is that you need to do that will compound itself every single day when you wake up in the morning. It might be 1, 2, or 3, it might be 10 things, right? If you've got big goals, lots of goals. What are the things you need to do in order to become that person? Now, let me give you some examples. If you want to become a really, really, really profound musician, it will be practicing the foundations and the art of your instrument day in and day out for X amount of time. If it is becoming an author or a writer, it's going to be writing. If it's creating a business that has a full book list of clients, it's going to be connecting with new people every day and creating things that serve them as well, every single day. If there's something to do with your health, there's going to be tiny little actions that you can take that will contribute to an overarching picture. Now, it might be that you have many, 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 many goals, or many things that you want all at once. What I recommend is finding a moment in the future, making it up obviously, a moment in time in the future where all those things have happened. Snap together one image where all of it has happened and become that person, because there's no telling in this game when things are going to happen, like in what order. So some things are going to happen before others. Other things you think they need to happen first, but something else happens in your life that you never saw coming, and so it speeds up another part of your goals. You don't have to worry about the how. You don't have to worry about the sequencing or the order. Your concern needs to be becoming the person who has the thing and doing the tiny actions that line up with the result. So the type of person you might want to be who has their own home, their dream house, maybe there's some kind of lesson in the type of character that you want to develop. Maybe it is that you would be an organized person when it comes to finances. You'd have all your finances in order. So you might have every single day something that you tick off that said, today I spent half an hour organizing my finances. Or once your finances are organized, learning about investing or doing something to do with having organized and compounded finances. So the way to put it all together is A, don't worry about the how. Just allow yourself to dream in isolation. Really think about what it is that you want. Don't worry about a timeline even, because often it's doing these tiny little tasks that make the biggest difference long out into the future. Second is asking yourself, okay, who do I need to be? And then what do I need to do to become that person? What are some everyday process-driven goals I can set, such as call one person every day, connect with one person every day, train for half an hour every day, practice my instrument, whatever it might be. It might be reading. It might be every day I do 6,000 steps or 10,000 steps. It might be every day I know I need to meditate. Every day I know I need to take my vitamins or eat this particular type of thing or read my goals or listen to something that I have created for myself that reminds me of being that person. It might be organizing your finances. It might be cleaning some cupboard out. It doesn't matter. What matters is you know who you have to become. And the discipline in creating the impossible is in getting really clear on what you know works, what you know brings you closer to what you want, and tracking it. So underneath this podcast episode, you'll see an image. The image is of my tracker. And you can see we're coming back into a new year and I have been so distracted. So you can see that, there's a list of things. I've sort of covered up what it says because it's personal. It won't make sense to anyone else anyway. And then you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all the way through to Sunday and all the little dots going down. Now, I'll tell you a secret. Every time I take my pen and I fill in one of those little dots, I get the best dopamine hit, and I recommend you do the same. You can print them out. You can find them on Etsy. I can actually link you to the website in Australia where I purchased mine, Infinite Lotus, or you can just write it out in a bullet journal on a piece of paper and tick it off. But what I know for sure is life is really distracting. And if we don't have something tangible and preferably analog that reminds us of what our mission is every day and whether we've done it or not, it's so easy to forget the tiny little things that add up to make the biggest difference over time. So think about this. If I'm taking off on a plane and that plane is angled just a couple of degrees in the wrong direction and the pilot never adjusts it, within the time I'm supposed to arrive at my destination, I could be in a completely different country. Because here, in this moment, the very tiny, small, seemingly intangible things that you do today add up to make the biggest differences down the track. No matter how insignificant it seems, start now. So your homework is, if you have a big audacious goal, if you want to turn your results to being external from internal, I want you to think about what are the things you know you need to do that will make a difference in becoming the person you want to become. Make a list, set up a little document that you can tick off with your tiny little document, your tiny little pen, and get your tiny little dopamine kick, and then go about ticking it off. Watch how good it feels. Also, be aware of how easy it is to get distracted and how easy it is to come back and go, wow, the whole day's gone, I haven't done any of these things. Or wow, whole week's gone, haven't done that. So think about that for yourself. Make one for yourself. Check out the resources that I've got below. And honestly, high performance habits of Superfreaks. Number one, think about the tiny insignificant changes you need to make here because it makes it so much more effortless up front. Your success will compound. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope this feels helpful for you. I know that at the beginning of a year, it can feel quite overwhelming with back to school or back to work and dreaming about things and making them happen and not wanting to overschedule and all that kind of jazz. So I really hope this feels helpful. Tiny little things that you can do. It will make you feel so in control, so powerful, and leads to massive things down the track. Remember, everything you want is so much closer than you think. So stay curious, stay open, and I will see you soon. Ciao for now.